You ever been told you can't leave your own home after dark? Yeah, that actually happened to me. It started with a letter taped to my front door that read, "All residents must remain indoors after 8 p.m. Violators will be fined and subject to enforcement." No signature, no official seal, just the HOA logo stamped in bold red ink. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank. Who tells grown adults they can't walk outside on their own property? But sure enough, the next day, everyone in the neighborhood was talking about it. Turns out the new HOA president, Brenda Holloway, was behind it, claiming the rule was for community safety after a few reported car break-ins nearby. Brenda wasn't your typical HOA type. She walked the neighborhood like she owned it, clipboard in hand, pen tapping as she took notes on people's driveways, fences, even the color of porch lights. And when she spoke, people listened. She had this unnerving mix of fake calm and quiet authority that made you second-guess your own rights. I tried to stay calm. My house sat on the edge of the neighborhood. Quiet street, long driveway, fenced yard. I figured the nonsense would blow over. But Brenda didn't like being ignored. 2 days later, she showed up in my driveway. No warning, no invitation. Just parked her little silver SUV sideways across my gate, blocking the exit. "Mr. Carson," she said, stepping out with her clipboard. "I noticed you were seen outside at 8:12 p.m. last night. That's a violation of Community Order 9C. I laughed. "You mean walking my dog?" Her lips tightened. "The curfew exists for everyone's protection. If you can't comply, there will be consequences." That's when I realized she wasn't bluffing. She had a laminated citation ready like a cop issuing a ticket. "Lady," I said, "this is private property. I don't pay you. I don't answer to you. And you sure as hell don't get to tell me when I can breathe outside." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You will follow the HOAS rules, Mr. Carson, or enforcement will visit." And just like that, she left. No shouting, no threats, just those words. That night, I sat by my window, watching the empty street. The whole curfew thing should have been laughable, but something about her tone stuck with me. Enforcement. What did that even mean? Then I started noticing strange things. A car idling near the corner, lights flicking on and off at random, and the sound of footsteps past my fence after dark. The next morning, a second notice appeared, slipped under my door. Final warning: 8 p.m. violations will trigger immediate HOA enforcement action. That's when I decided I wasn't backing down. If they wanted to enforce their fake curfew, they'd have to come face to face with me, because no one, not even some wannabe HOA tyrant, gets to tell me when I can step outside my own damn house. It was 8:47 p.m. The air was still, the kind of quiet that makes every sound echo just a bit too loud. I stepped out to grab a toolbox I'd left in my truck. Nothing more than a 30-second walk. The gravel crunched under my boots, and the night breeze brushed against my arms. Then the motion lights flicked on. 2 figures stood at the edge of my driveway. Black shirts, bold white letters across the chest that read, "HO." Not security, not police. Just 3 letters they thought gave them power. One of them called out, "Evening, Mr. Carson. You're aware it's past curfew, right?" I straightened, keeping my voice calm. "You're aware this is private property, right? He ignored me and gestured to his buddy. Document this. He's violating 9C again. That's when I took my phone out and started recording. Smile for the camera, I said evenly. This will look great when the cops see you trespassing. The thinner one stepped forward fast, reaching for my phone. Put that away, he barked. No, I said flatly. You're already in enough trouble. Before I could blink, the bigger guy shoved me hard, right in the chest. I staggered back a step, my hand gripping the edge of my truck for balance. The surge of adrenaline hit instantly. You just made a mistake, I warned. He swung first, wide, sloppy, meant to scare me. I ducked under it, caught his wrist, twisted, and used his own weight to throw him down hard onto the gravel. The crunch beneath him echoed sharp in the quiet night. The other lunged from behind, trying to grab me by the arm. I spun, caught his elbow, and drove it down across my forearm. He grunted, tried to recover, but I stepped in, hooked his leg, and swept him flat on his back. He came up again, swinging wildly. I slipped past his strike, grabbed his collar, gave him a good punch in the ribs, and dropped him with a controlled shoulder throw that knocked the wind clean out of him. He shouted in pain. Stay down, I barked. Don't make me repeat it. But the big one didn't listen. He fumbled at his waistband. Maybe for a flashlight, maybe worse. I moved in fast, pinned him face first, one knee pressed just enough to hold him. Controlled, trained, efficient. Come on, man, he wheezed. We're just enforcing HOA policy. You're trespassing and assaulting a homeowner, I snapped. That's not policy. That's a felony. From across the street, porch lights flicked on. A neighbor shouted, I'm calling the police. Good. Let them come. Minutes later, sirens split the night. Red and blue lights washed across the drive as 2 patrol cars rolled up. Hands where we can see them, an officer ordered. I raised mine, stepping back from the 2 groaning men. They attacked me on my property, I said calmly. It's all on my phone. The officers moved in, separating everyone. One glance at my forearm paused at the sight of the Marine Corps insignia inked there. You're military, he asked. Retired USMC, I replied simply. They picked the wrong guy to jump. The officer nodded, turning cold eyes on the attackers. You 2 are done. Stand up. You're under arrest for trespassing and assault. As the cuffs clicked, Brenda Holloway's voice carried faintly from across the street. Panicked, shouting something about misunderstandings. I didn't bother to look. I just watched the lights flash against my fence and thought this wasn't an HOA anymore. It was a cult with clipboards and muscle, and Brenda had no idea what kind of storm she just started. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe, because the story is only going to get better. The 2 self-proclaimed HOA enforcers were cuffed near the back of a cruiser, bruised, winded, and suddenly not so tough. One officer walked over, flipping through his notepad. You said they confronted you first. I nodded, replaying the footage on my phone. Every second was there. The shove, the threats, the first swing, and the takedown. The officer leaned in, watched quietly, then exhaled through his nose. Well, he said, looks like they picked the wrong homeowner. While I was giving my statement, another unit went to verify them of being authorized HOA patrol. That's when the truth came out. They weren't licensed for security, had no background checks, and were acting under Brenda Holloway's personal orders. She'd created a so-called community enforcement division after the supposed curfew violations and told them they had permission to detain residents if necessary. That lie unraveled fast. Brenda herself came marching down the street in a bathrobe, shouting that it was all a misunderstanding. The officers didn't buy it. They separated her, ran her name, and discovered multiple complaints already filed by other residents for harassment and intimidation. By midnight, everyone involved was taken downtown. The two enforcers were booked for trespassing, assault, and unlawful restraint. Brenda faced criminal impersonation of a security official, incitement, and conspiracy to commit assault. A detective pulled me aside before leaving. "Mr. Carson," he said, "I read your background report." "Marine Corps retired," I replied. He smirked. "Figures most folks wouldn't have handled it that cleanly." The next few days were chaos. Local news stations picked up the story. HOA president arrested for fake curfew patrol assault. Cameras rolled through the neighborhood. Reporters called it a case study and overreach. The HOA board held an emergency meeting without Brenda and voted unanimously to dissolve the entire enforcement program. I filed charges myself soon after: assault, trespass, emotional distress, and defamation. Between my footage, the police report, and Brenda's own written memos, the case was ironclad. 3 weeks later, the charges came through. Brenda Holloway was hit hardest: $25,000 in civil fines, a restraining order from my property, and full removal from her HOA position. The county labeled her unfit for neighborhood management. The two fake enforcers faced assault and impersonation charges. Each fined $7,500 and sentenced to 6 months of probation, plus mandatory community service under local police supervision. The HOA was fined heavily and legally barred from enforcing curfews or patrol policies ever again. Standing in my yard that evening, the air finally felt normal again. Quiet, peaceful, free. They said the curfew was to keep us safe. But sometimes the real danger isn't outside your door. It's the people pretending to protect it.